Beers and Gears, the Colin Murphy project keeps on rolling. This is an episode like you haven't seen before. Now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the project. So, last show you saw us clear out some of this stuff so we can get at the engine. And today we're going to tear this engine down because the goal is to go from a 883 cubic inch to a 1295 cubic inch. And as they say, there's no replacement for displacement. So when you're looking at making more horsepower, that's the best thing to do. So we're going to replace what they call the jugs and the pistons. In order to do that, we got to take the top part of the engine off, and we're basically going to scrap it right down to the piston rods, connecting rods. I will explain all the steps as we go, but whatever you do, don't take this as a how-to video. You want to see exactly how this is done with all the steps and all the sequences and all the torque and everything else. Go to Hammer Performance website. They're the company that makes the kit. And in the meantime, if you want a kit, put in the sports for yourself, drop me a line, shoot me an email, leave me a comment on this video, and we'll go from there. But this is the main job of this whole rebuild starting here tonight. So we got Vinny behind the camera as usual, looking after all the technical stuff. I got my brother Salt with me. Chewy's in the house. Chewy's here, so when we can't lift something or bend something, he's the man for that. And hopefully, Vinny will be able to blur out my brother's Indian shirt. But anyway, let's get her going. So this right here is what we call your rocker box. The reason it's called a rocker box is because you got these little things here and they're rockers. So what happens is, as your engine turns, there's push rods in these tubes, and they come up here and they'll operate your rockers and your valves. So the rockers will actually push the valves open and close, and the whole thing when it's running, and we'll get some video of it, looks like it's going like this. So that's why they call them a rocker box. So we're going to take this rocker box off now. In order to do that, we got to bring the cylinder up the top dead center. So that means the piston's at the very top of its travel, and it's got to be on compression. And the compression stroke means that the valves are closed. So when the piston comes up to the top, it basically creates pressure on your oil and gas mixture, and that's what causes your explosion, which pushes your piston down and get your vehicle to run. So we're going to bring this up on top dead center now, and we're going to pull these rocker boxes off. There's various ways to do this. I always just stick a piece of tissue in the spark plug hole and get the spark plugs out. We'll crank it over by turning the wheel. We've got the bike in 5th gear. We'll crank the wheel, and when she comes up on compression, she'll spit the tissue out, and then we'll just use a little piece of plastic or a small screwdriver. We'll put it down there, and we'll wait till the piston comes up to the very top. It starts to go back down again. We'll stop, and then we're ready to take this rocker box off. Box on the older bike is in 3 pieces, as you saw us taking apart. This is what he calls them rockers. You can see them. See how they rock back and forth like that, like so. And what they're doing is they're opening and closing these guys, which are your valves. So your push rod moves up and down depending on how your camshaft moves. That forces this rocker to rock. And when the push rod comes up, the rocker pushes down and opens your valve. Intake valves in the middle of the bike, exhaust valves on the outside of the bike. So we got to get this intake off now and a few other things, and then we're going to take this head off. So that's next. Let's keep going. box off. We talked about that. We showed you why it's called a rocker box. Now we got the head off. The valves, of course, stays in the head. You can see your exhaust port here, your intake port here, where your intake manifold sits. If you flip it over, you can have a look at your valves there. It's not hard to figure out which one is intake and which one is exhaust. The bigger one is always the intake. So that's it for that. Shall we? Another baby for you. So you come over here. We took our push rods out earlier. These are just tubes that the push rod sits in. We'll get rid of these. And here is our jug. So this is our jug. This is our piston. We're going to replace this jug with basically a jug with a bigger hole in it, which means it's going to have a bigger piston. And that's what's going to take our displacement from 883 to 1275. That's what's going to give us all the extra power. I'm going to grab that rod, just you're good. There you go. And there you see our jug. So this is our piston, and this is our connecting rod. We are going to replace the piston. We're not going to mess with the rod whatsoever. First thing I'm going to do before I do anything here is I'm going to get some clean rags, and I'm going to pack this area here. It's going to help support the rod to keep it from banging around, and it's going to prevent salt from dropping anything down in the engine, and then we got to take it all apart. So that's what we're going to do next, and things are moving along pretty good. So here you go, we got the jug off. This is the piston, this is what's being replaced. This here is your connecting rod. We're not touching the connecting rod. This in here, this is your wrist pin, it's called. That wrist pin has got to come out for us to haul this piston off. Now that wrist pin is locked in there with a little clip. And you can just see the little clip here. So we're going to take that clip out, and then we're going to push that piston out from the other side. Sometimes over the course of time, a little ridge will develop in there, and you can't get the piston, you can't get the wrist pin out. So you need a special tool. I don't have that special tool, so we're going to see how it goes. We may have to make something up to get that wrist pin out, but there's no time like the present. Let's do it. So we got the engine strapped down to the point that we need to get it strapped down to put in our big bore kit. You can see we're leaving the connecting rods, the base of the engine, all that is staying just like it is. We're only going to replace the pistons, the wrist pins, the jugs, and then we'll reassemble it all and go from there. But so far we're looking good. So we got our jugs on with our new pistons in there. This is the big bore kit, the meat and potatoes of the job. Done. All we're going to do after this is put the push rods back in, put our rocker boxes and everything back in. The valve train doesn't get changed. Like I said before, this is not a how-to video, so I'm going to do that off camera. There's no need to bore everybody to death with that. But you saw the meat and potatoes of it. And this is going to bump her up to 1275, so it's going to be quite a bit more power than he had before. So the Carl Murphy project is coming along, And next episode we may be rebuilding forks and stripping the front end. But for now, that's it for Bears and Gears.